that stage?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm an insurance agent. I was an insurance agent in 1974, formed a partnership with a fellow by the name of Tom Faulkner in town. It's called the Thomas J. Faulkner Insurance Agency. And I had been there 5 years, and here came the tornado. October 3rd, 1979, at 2:55, I was on the second floor of the Windsor House restaurant talking to Jim and Chuck Rocci concerning a buy and sell agreement for their business. And we finished up with that, walked downstairs and walked into the bar area. TV was on, and it was dead quiet. And I said, what's going on? And somebody said, quiet, quiet. And they were listening to the TV. And they had power. And they were showing pictures of the tornado. And of course, we weren't sure exactly where it touched down. At least I didn't know at that time. So I attempted to call my wife, before cell phones, of course, so I had to use a payphone, call my wife, and the phone rang and rang and rang and rang, and nobody answered. So I was pretty concerned that possibly our house got hit. The kids, of course, got out of school at that time, so we're concerned about that. Well, fortunately, nothing happened at our house on East Street. But we started making phone calls to people living up in the McQuonic area. The same thing, the phone would ring and ring and ring, but nobody would answer. So we contacted our largest carrier at that time, the Aetna, which at that time was writing property and casualty insurance, and asked them to send an adjuster out the next morning so he'd go up to the area and see how bad the damage was and how many clients of ours were damaged. And they did. They met us at 7 o'clock at our office on Spring Street, and off we went up 75. First place we stopped at was Automatic Lube, which was owned by Jack Benoit. Jack was a former president of the Chamber of Commerce, and he was sitting in his car, and the entire top of his building was off. Windows were blown out, and he was obviously devastated. That was on Tunxus Avenue. That was the first one that we had damaged. It really touched down just before that, right by the fire station. So we continued on, and we had people couldn't call us to let us know that they had claims, so we had to try to find them. And fortunately, it was 40 years ago when I was a lot younger, and my memory was a lot better. So we proceeded up River Street, and the first house we came to there, he was actually standing in his cellar, and there's nothing at all in the building. No furnace, no nothing. It was just and he had, I'll never forget it, he had a winter shirt on. It was hot. God, it was hot, October 4th, now we're talking about. And had a winter shirt on, and he was pulling nails out of a 2x4. And I said, John, what are you doing? He said, well, I got to save this lumber. I got to rebuild this house. And I said, you don't need to do that. The insurance adjuster's here, and we're going to make you whole. We're going to put you back in the same situation you were before. And the adjuster wrote him a check on the spot. This is 1979 for $75,000 as a down payment to get going, to start working on rebuilding his house. And he, I don't forget it, he took the check and he put it in his pocket, in his shirt pocket. We proceeded on and to all the other homes. The next morning I came back. I went up every day for 30 days checking on the clients. And his wife was there. And I said to her, did John give you the check that I gave him? She said, no. I said, I gave him a check for $75,000. And she said, well, he slept in his car last night. Let me go look in the car and see if the shirt's there. And the shirt was there and the check was there. He never remembered I gave it to him. And because there's so many people were in shock. Another interesting story, I think is interesting anyway. We went up to it was interesting what the tornado did. It would hit a house, skip over 2 or 3 houses, hit another house, go across the street, hit a couple, and then leave. And the houses that it didn't touch, there was nothing wrong with them at all. Absolutely nothing at all. But the ones that were hit were pretty devastated. And the people were not thinking straight. And I can understand why. They had lost all their possessions, all their pictures, and that's probably what people were more concerned about than anything else. Their pictures. My wedding pictures are gone. The birth of my kids are gone. I could never replace that. Today, fortunately, we're able to do things such as computers to be able to save them. The couple of other interesting things, I think one of the people we came to their house, and the fellow was standing in his garage, or what was his garage. His house had not been touched, but his garage was gone. And he had a golf club in his hand. And we got out of the car and started walking up the driveway. And he started swinging the golf club. Not trying to hit me or anything like that, but just swinging the golf club. And he said to me, Mike, I just bought these golf clubs for my wife. I finally got her to play golf, and they're gone. He wasn't concerned about his garage. He was concerned about these golf clubs, because I guess he had finally talked to his wife into playing golf, which he really enjoyed doing, and now the golf clubs are gone. So I said to him, how about if we write you a check right now for the golf clubs? He said, you do that? I said, yeah. And the fellow wrote him a check. I think it was for $200 for golf clubs. And that settled him right down. He was fine after that. And then we started talking about the garage and what he was going to do and rebuilding and stuff like that. But people just were in a state of shock, and it's hard to explain. It really is. Really is.
Did you get a sense of what people needed? What were people saying? You know, what had devastated you? You mentioned the photographs, the loss of the photographs. What other things were?
Well, the main thing, seriously, was people thought this was an act of God. You've probably heard that term before, and acts of gods are not covered. Well, that's totally inaccurate. The tornado obviously was covered, and I think they just wanted somebody to tell them, yes, you have insurance, and yes, we're going to rebuild this house the same way it was before. And having the adjuster from the Aetna there, I think, was very, very important, because it wasn't just me telling them. It was the actual insurance company, and they were actually handing out money. So I think that put them at ease anyway. Many of them, of course, were concerned that their kids had been injured, because this first fellow I mentioned, when he was standing in his basement, the school bus didn't come home, and he had been home. So he didn't know if something happened to the school bus or not. Well, they stopped the school buses from coming home, as you probably know, and his kids were safe. There's nothing wrong with his kids at all. But so those were concerns that people had too. But the camaraderie of everybody getting together, I think, was what kept everybody from not going crazy. A lot of help from a lot of different people. And the ones who are not damaged were helping the people that were damaged.
So talk a little bit about that. You were a Windsor citizen. You were aware that people were coming in to help. You yourself were helping. Who were, what organizations, who do you remember as being particularly helpful?
The one I remember the most is the Windsor JCs, because I got a phone call that night from Al Ilg, who was the town manager at that time. And I was president of the Windsor Windsor JCs. And he said to me, hey, we need a bunch of you guys to come up starting tomorrow to give us a hand. Can you do that? And I said, I personally can't do it. I'm a little busy myself, but I'll make sure. And we had about 20 fellows that called into work and said, look, we got more important things to do. And the businesses allowed them to do this. And they went up and helped people, bringing food to them. Remember, all of the restaurants were gone or damaged. There's no power. So food was important, and places to live were important. We got in places in the local hotels. Some of them had power, some of them didn't, some had generators. And then we immediately started getting housing for them in the form of trailers, which the town, I think, ended up getting 59 trailers. And some of my clients stayed in them for months and months and months.
So you would really, as an insurance agent, have a very good idea of where the areas of most devastation are. Could you just sort of go through that?
Yeah. It was Pequannock.
Yes.
Nothing was done in Windsor. And it was hardest hit right along the river, the Farmington River. And that's where Jack Benoit was, and that's where this fellow is that I was telling you about, who lost his house totally. And it went as far north as Windsor Locks. It was in Spring Street in Windsor Locks. Was the furthest place I remember. And interesting story about that. A fellow there owned a radiator repair shop. And it was in this old wooden structure that you could blow it over probably without any problem at all. And he had built on the same premises a concrete block building that he was going to move into. When the tornado hit, he was in the old building. The new building got totally destroyed. Nothing happened to the old building. So had he been in the new building, he would have been dead. No question about it at all. It damaged some of the property, like Windsor Bank and Trust at that time, which is now Webster Bank on Route 75. That's where the individual got killed. A 2x4 went through the truck he was sitting in and killed him. But there at the bank, there was paper stuck in the jambs of the doors. You don't know how it could do that. It seems like it's impossible. I had a boat that ended up in Southwick, Mass. That yes, yeah, a whole boat. I got a call from somebody, and they said, "I understand you're the insurance agent for such and such. His boat's in my yard." And I said, "Congratulations." And he said, "What do you mean? Aren't you going to come get it?" I said, "No, it's not our problem. It's your problem." So I don't know if he kept the boat or not, but so it was in a tight area. It didn't go all over the place, and it seemed to go up one side of a street, and then the next street it would go up the other side of the street. I don't know how it worked, but it did. It was very devastating.
What do you remember about the town's response to the tornado?
The town was there first thing in the morning. They had a police officer right about actually I think he was at the fire station, and they stopped everybody coming in to find out what your reason was for going in there. And of course they allowed us to go in there because we had the adjuster with us. We also had a cameraman from the Aetna who was taking photos. But they stopped a lot of people from going in there, and which was right, because there's too many people up there looking for souvenirs and stuff and gawking and stuff like that. And these people were upset enough without having people pouring around their property and stuff. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
yeah. So was this an unusual thing that you did to go up the morning afterwards with the Aetna insurer with claims? How does the process normally work when there's a disaster?
Yeah.
So tell us.
Well, normally what happens is people call you and say, "Hey, my house is on fire," or "My house blew down," or something, and we provide the service of physically going up there, sitting down with the people. In this case, we couldn't sit down with them. We had to stand up with them and reviewing the coverage and letting them know what's going to happen and take them through the steps of what's going to happen. Not every insurance agent does that. We do as a service. We also do things such as get them housing, help out with anything that they need, short of babysitting. We do what we can. People lost animals too, and that really affected some people. About a year and a half after the tornado, I got a phone call from a client, and she said, "Can I come see you?" And I said, "Sure." And so she came in the office, and she sat down, and I got to be careful about this. She started crying, and I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "My dog died." It was the last thing from the house that she had. And I started crying. We both sat there crying. And I don't like dogs, so I mean, it was pretty interesting that I had some pain in me. So things like that and people would have flashbacks years later and remember it vividly. And some people rode that out. Some people were home when it happened. Fortunately, there was only, I believe, 3 people died. And why there wasn't more is beyond me. The Pequannock School, I do not believe, was damaged. The church across the street was. Carmen's Funeral Home had some damage up there. So Hollow Brook was hit pretty bad, but it skipped around. It did what it wanted to do. Yeah. I can remember when it hit, going downstairs. First of all, it sounded like we were right near the train track. So you hear this train, and you figure it's a train. Well, that was not the train. It was a tornado coming through. It got so dark and so quiet. Now remember, this is 3 o'clock in the afternoon when it should be bright out. Got so dark and so quiet, it was eerie. And then the sun came out, and it was the most beautiful day in the fall. It came and went. I 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, 10 minutes at the most. It was there and gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out to be a beautiful day.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Now, one thing that I've just read is that it was on a Wednesday, and that was
That's
an
correct.
early dismissal day
Yes.
for the schools, and you had kids in the schools.
Yes, I did. Yep. And so somebody was watching over somebody, I guess. That's for sure. Because there were no children died at all. There's 3 adults who died. I believe 1 in a home, and there was 1 in that car. I know of that. And then there's a 3rd one somewhere. I'm not sure where.
Yeah.
But no, a lot of people were very fortunate. And a lot of people were not very fortunate. I mean, loss of animals, loss of memorabilia, that hurt a lot. But they came back strong. And none of my clients moved.
Really?
Yep, none of my clients moved at all, which I think was pretty interesting. And to give you the breadth of what I'm speaking of, I had 17 houses totally destroyed, meaning from the foundation up. I had well over 50 partially damaged, anywhere from roofs to garages and then I had 7 businesses that were hit pretty hard, 1 being my radiator guy and 1 being the bank. And then the thing that I thought was very interesting is I had over 100 car claims. And I'm not talking about just the cars that were in people's homes. I'm talking about the cars at the airport. I never knew, and you think about it now, it's logical, how many people park the car at the airport, either at, run carriers or something like that, and fly out. Well, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cars. And I had more car claims than I had homeowners claims.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. Yeah.
So what do you think the lasting impact of the tornado has been on Windsor? Was there a lasting impact of it?
I think the only impact, at least from my standpoint, was that the town people and the town itself all pitched in. When I say that the Jaycees were involved, I'm sure the Lions were involved. I'm sure Kiwanis was involved. I know the churches were involved. Everybody just, whatever they could do, they did. And that helped out tremendously because it wasn't just the insurance companies, it wasn't just the Jaycee, it was a whole town coming together. You could never, I don't think many towns could do that.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. And we're very fortunate here.
Yes, I think we are too. In retrospect, is there anything that you would have done differently or you wish you'd done?
No, I to be honest with you, I was very pleased by the way things worked out. From a business standpoint, I mean, people got promptly paid. The companies all, now we had the Aetna, but we had Middlesex Mutual at that time. We had Vermont Mutual. All these companies immediately got aboard and started doing what they had to do. And there was no, the one fellow that I remember had what was called a homeowner's inventory book. When you go out to see people, you have to remember back then, insurance was sold by sitting in someone's home at their kitchen table, reviewing the coverages, manually rating the policy to give them a quote. Today, it's not done like that at all. Today, it's done over a computer. And I would say we're not physically inside 70% of the people's homes because people do business differently today. They want to be on their phone. They want to be on their computer. They're too busy to have people come to their home. One kid's got soccer practice. One kid's got music lessons. Nobody eats together anymore. So it's a different situation. So I knew all these people personally. Mm-hmm. And so it was part of me that was injured when it happened. And I was very, very pleased that things went as well as they did. We had no problems at all.
No pushback.
No pushback. I did have some people come to me because I was up there that I didn't insure and said, we haven't heard from our company. We're trying to get answers. Can you help us out? And of course we did. I mean, that's.
How were you able to help them?
Well, I would call the insurance company that they were insured by, report it, find out what was going on. They didn't really have to talk to me, but they did. Some of the direct writers, they did talk to me, and we got things. And I also just explained to them what was covered, what was not. When I say what was not covered, if someone had a large collection of jewelry and they didn't have it separately insured, that would be limited. So I went through all that with them too. If they had a boat and they didn't have it insured, that wouldn't have been covered. Snowmobiles, things of that nature. So back to my fellow up there with his household inventory book. So when I went to see these people back at probably in 74, 75, he said to me, what would happen if I had a claim on my house? And I said, well, for instance, on the contents, if your kitchen was destroyed, the insurance company would ask you to make out what's called a proof of loss, which would list all the items in your kitchen that were destroyed. And then they would pay you to replace those items. He said, well, you can't remember everything that you have in your kitchen. I said, no, you can't. I said, as a matter of fact, I'm facing him, and I said, what's in the kitchen drawer behind you? And he named about 4 or 5 things, which there's like 15 or 20 things. And he said, well, I understand what you're talking about now. So the companies had this thing called a household inventory book. And it was a book, room by room, that you would list everything that was in that room. TV, couch, and what the replacement cost would be of that. So when his house was destroyed, and literally destroyed, I think I gave you a picture of his house before we started here. There's no second floor at all. And they were in the basement. And in his car was a household inventory book. So when the adjuster stopped, we went in, and the adjuster said to him, okay, well, we got to find out what's damaged to your contents here. And he said, well, I have this book. And he opened up the book and gave it to the adjuster. And he was very detailed, an engineer by trade, so you can imagine how detailed they were. And the adjuster wrote him a check for the entire amount of the contents. No questions asked. No. So, and I'm trying to remember how many days it took to get power back there, but it did take a while. So at night, of course, it was dark, and that's what they were concerned about, people looting and stuff like that. So,
do you think people, not necessarily your people, because you worked with them and they had the inventory books, do you think a lot of people kind of learned in retrospect how to better insure themselves after?
Oh, I think so. And then I think the agents that were up there doing their job, because that's basically what we get paid for. We just give you a piece of paper, and you hope that that piece of paper is worth something. So until you actually have a claim that devastating, and it's devastating, you really don't know how good that piece of paper is, nor do you know how good that insurance agent is or the insurance company you have. And that's when you find out. So I think I do know, I was able to write insurance on some clients that I did not write that heard about me because of what was done up there. And they came to me, and sometimes money is not the most important thing when it comes to something like that. It's a service. Yep.
So is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about?
No, I don't think so. On a personal note, my wife had just gotten out of the hospital 3 days before the event, and our kids were then 9 and 6. And as I said, every morning I go up there at 7 o'clock in the morning and stay there till usually 8 o'clock at night, and then come home. I couldn't leave my wife after just getting out of the hospital, so I hired a babysitter who came in and helped with the kids when they came home from school and got them off to school and stuff like that. And I didn't see her for a month, and we're still married. So I think that's pretty good, because it was. So everybody had personal problems, not just the people that were involved in the thing itself. So I think the key to the whole thing was how everybody actually worked together to get this thing done. There were no arguments. There was no problems. As you probably know, the only problem we had was with contractors coming from out of state, mainly Texas, as a matter of fact, that were roofers. And of course, many roofs were either damaged or destroyed. So there's a lot of work to be done and not enough contractors to do it. So at that time, I believe I'm right in saying that a square of roofing shingles installed was $65 a square. That was the going price. That's what everybody was paying. And they were coming in asking for $150, and people were paying it because they wanted to get the roof back on their house. And Grasso stopped that. She went out and said, no, not doing that. The going rate is $65. That's what we're going to pay, and nobody can charge any more than that. So that helped out a lot of people too. It really did. I didn't know until then that there are firms that's how they do business. They just travel all over the country.
They track disasters.
Yep, catastrophes and kind of prey on the people that are there. Their work is probably good, but they just take advantage of people. And there's no need to do that back then. That's for sure.
Well, you mentioned Governor Grasso stopped that. Talk
Yes.
a little bit about Governor Grasso and sort of her presence. And
She was there. She was there all the time too. Her and her husband Tom, and she was a people person anyway. I mean, she came up from the ranks. She lived in Windsor Locks, not too far from where the tornado was. I mean, her home could have been damaged just as well as anybody else's. So she had, money in the game, I guess is what you'd say, because it almost happened to her too. So she was there. Not every day, obviously. She had other things to do too, but was instrumental in getting state aid and federal aid, because we had federal aid for that too. And then the government came out with low interest loans for people that either didn't have insurance or underinsured or needed some money to help get going and back up again. The banks, of course, are a big help. And everybody did what they had to do to get people back. It was October. Most people were not in their homes at Christmas time, which is another thing that obviously was not great. But
do you remember town organizations coming together to try to address the first Christmas?
no, I don't. I don't. No, I don't at all. Very possible they did, but
Okay.
40 years is a long time ago.
40 years is a while back.
That's for sure. I was young back then.
Any other memories that you'd like to share with us about those?
Yeah,
those few months?
I'll tell you one other thing that's kind of interesting, not interesting, very interesting. Our local dentist in town, Dr. Ganji.
Yes.
Well, Dr. Ganji knew that I was, and he was up in that area, but not damaged. And he was not he was on Farmstead or off Farmstead Lane in Windsor, which is off 75, but it didn't get that far down into the center, so he was okay. But he knew my situation of my wife having just gotten out of the hospital, and I wasn't home at night and stuff. So one night I got home about 7 o'clock, and on the front porch was a little note with food, with instructions on how to heat up the food that Val, his wife, had made, so that we had a dinner that night. So people help people. People help people who were helping people, and it was well appreciated. That's for sure. That's for sure. So, just a little antidote.
Well, I think that's one of the messages that Jenny and I want to get out there.
Yep.
This community really came together.
They did. They did. Yeah. And I know they do it again. I really do, because that's who we are. That's who we are. So.
Okay.
Great. I had one quick question. Maybe. No, we can keep it there. Okay. I'll slide it next to you. Just going back a little bit. So you were there to do a job. You were there professionally, but you're a Windsor guy. You grew up here. You had a relationship with these people. How hard was it to see what you walked into and describe what you walked into, and then to have to shut those emotions down? Or did you not shut them down?
As you said, I had a job to do. So when I came up on someone's property. Because remember, we didn't know who was damaged and who wasn't. So, like the fellow that had the golf club waving it. I was totally business, totally business. It was afterwards is when the emotions came. When the people, you give them the checks, they start crying. And you start crying. And everybody be crying. It was probably months later when the effects, and the effects were not just for the people that were damaged, but it was for everybody. You know, the mailman, I'm sure, and everybody that had contact with him. These people I knew, these people were my friends, number one. They were clients second. And I knew their kids. My kids played baseball with their kids. You know, it was a family thing. It wasn't a business thing. I was just there to give them money to get back where they were. But my main reason was there is to see them, hold their hands. You know, the story of the dog is, and like I said, I don't like dogs, but it was very touching. I mean, and she wanted to see me to tell me because, you know, we had lived through it together. And so she felt I'm part of the family. And I felt that way. And I am that way. And I'm still that way with my clients. You don't buy insurance from me. You buy Mike Rabbett and you get me 24/7. My home phone number's on my business cards. You know, I got a problem, you call me. It's not, you know, 1-800, who cares? It's, we care. And that's the way I started my business. And I will say that, and I want to explain this after I say it, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to my business. Because here I was a relatively young fellow who had been in the business 5 years as an insurance agent, had been in the insurance company for 10 years prior to that, but as an insurance agent for 5 years. I was working with a fellow who was not originally from town, he was from Manchester. And we got together because I was from Windsor and he wanted some presence in Windsor. And because I went to school here and played sports here and knew everybody here, it was a great fit. But even to this day, I don't do it for the money, although the money comes in handy to feed the family. I do it because I really, really think insurance is an extremely important product. And if you don't have the right insurance, or you don't have the people behind you, or the companies behind you, you're going to have a problem. And in a small little claim, it doesn't really show much. But in a claim like this, for insurance companies to write checks for that amount of money, it is tremendous. No signing anything, no, you know, I don't even know if they do that today, to be honest with you. Although I think they would, because they knew. And the, well, it's an interesting thing. The vice president of the Aetna, who's in charge of the Hartford office, lived in Windsor. That probably didn't hurt either, you know. But remember, a lot of insurance people live in town from insurance companies. So, and if you saw it, if you physically saw some of the pictures I brought, it's hard to believe. It's just hard to believe that you can take a piece of paper and stick it in a door jamb. How that happens is beyond me. It's just beyond me. I don't get it. But strange things happen.